Off top of all the teams in the AFC East, there are only 2 cities that have never had a temperature of 100 degrees or higher. Buffalo and Miami. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. Mina Kimes is joining us as usual on Friday, and she is properly shocked.
Legitimately surprising and interesting fun fact. Wait, I have one for you.
Okay.
Field Yates just sent this to me. This actually might segue into some, I don't know. The 3-7 New Orleans Saints have spent more time leading than the 9-0 Kansas City Chiefs this year.
That is perfect. Yeah, that leads us right into the conversation about the fraud but not fraud Chiefs. And so we're going to talk about with Mina today. Before we get to Charles McDonald, we've decided to talk to Mina about these 2 very important, consequential games in the AFC. So it's the Chiefs and at the Bills, and it's the Ravens at the Steelers. Let's start in Buffalo with Kansas City. So first thing I want to say, I'm starting to accept that it's not a fluke. And even though the Chiefs' point differential is small, that they actually are really good. Mina, please bring me back to sanity. I've been listening to people for too long, and I've started to convince myself that they got some sort of knack.
Well, one thing we talked about on my show this week, previewing this game, was the fact that Mahomes has been unbelievable on third down, and the offense has not been that good on early downs. He's like first in success rate,
QBR,
top 5 in EPA per play, all of it on third down. So normally I would hear that, and as a dork, I'd say, well, that's not sustainable. Yeah. That tends to regress over time. But it's Patrick Mahomes, so I'm like, I can't really bring myself to lean fully into the third down offense is unsustainable. Like that was the case with the Bucs actually last year. Although actually they've been good this year too, but I think some of that had to do with the change of coordinator. Mm-hmm. I think, Domonique, that this offense has its limitations. I think the tackle position is a serious problem against good pass rushes. However, the run game is efficient enough, and you have such an edge at quarterback and play caller, and your defense is so good that while they're probably not 9-0 good, they're still the best team.
Along with the third down stuff and you becoming a believer because it is Patrick Mahomes and it does feel sustainable because he's such a special player, I'll also throw in there, and I think we talked about this some on your podcast, is the fourth quarter is also their numbers for their team. Yeah. All the stats that you and I tend to respect in the fourth quarter for the Chiefs, they're quite good. And there's enough, and so you point to fourth quarter, you say the sample size is too small because it's just the fourth quarter, but it's the fourth quarter over the course of 9 particular games. And so if I'm to convince myself that this statistical anomaly is sustainable, which sometimes there are certain situations that allow for anomaly to be sustainable, it's an obvious reason why this anomaly might be sustainable, because Patrick Mahomes actually is kind of special in the fourth quarter. Steve Spagnuolo actually is kind of a really good defensive coordinator, and it's possible that this is just because it hasn't happened before and it feels unique. When you look at the great big picture, it's like, all right, doesn't work. But when you look at how it works in the game, through the first 3 quarters of a game, you're like, this team ain't good. And then they get to fourth quarter and all of a sudden they look special, and that feels like.
Isn't that representative of the sample that we saw last year in the playoffs, though, where the offense was completely different and Mahomes had an 87 QBR? Because that feels closer to what we're seeing in these high leverage situations in fourth quarters.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all getting at the same thing, is that they're
clutch gene. You're just statistically defending the clutch gene that Patrick Mahomes has.
It feels like.
Well,
go ahead, Mina.
No, yeah, I mean, it's not just Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
The best defensive player in this team has a very storied recent history of turning it on at the end of games and closing them out, talking about Chris Jones. I think the thing that I would also add to this whole Chiefs conversation as to why I think this is sustainable and why I think it's still going to be very, very hard to take them down is the competition. Yeah. So the Denver Broncos game, to me, was really interesting to watch because that defense did everything you have to do against this team. Stop the run on early downs. This team, prior to that game, had been incredibly efficient, not explosive, but efficient running the football. Denver shut them down. They've been an excellent running defense all year long. Defensive tackles are so good. They played sticky man coverage. They forced the skill players to make plays. They got after Mahomes with pressure consistently over the course of the game. And they held them to, 16 points, right? But there's no team in the NFL, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, that has a defense that's at that level, but also an offense that can hang. Denver does not have an offense, right? So there's, I think that's a big thing for the Chiefs is like, I don't look across the league and see any team that really scares me because I don't think any team has all of the necessary components.
Right. There are teams that I think are talented enough to give them trouble, but there isn't a team that is balanced enough to do so. I think obviously we see the point you made about Chris Jones and about that whole D-line, honestly. Yeah, they find situations where they do have the advantage. Of all the wins this year, that last one felt like, because it's such a random way to do it, that's the that last one is the one that I think is probably not as consistent. But I mean, Patrick, they were doing the tight man coverage thing and also winning on the tackle, which I'm like, all right, the Chiefs don't have anybody that beats tight man coverage. It's like maybe Kelsey ad-libbing a route with Mahomes. But you know how Mahomes answered it? Is what you do when you have tight man coverage. You tuck it and scoot. And even though he was waddling out there like the penguin, he was getting big plays.
That's so sad.
I'm on episode 4. Don't ruin it for me. I, unlike you guys, respect spoilers.
This is not a spoiler, but our 13-month-old son is now walking, but we call him the penguin because he literally walks like kind of like waddles around the house.
At least it's not an ethical assessment of him, I hope. It's just the way he walks.
Well, I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to comment on that question. The Broncos game, Dominique, two things. Yes, you got a quarterback who can take off and play make, right? Because there was moments where he would escape pressure and then he finds P. Ryan for a huge game. And then the other thing they have, and I almost feel like we've reached a point where we don't talk about this enough, the play caller. Yeah. Andy Reid had a few really perfect play calls in that Broncos game on third downs in particular. And they were not able to beat man coverage because they had better players. They'd be able to beat man coverage in a few moments in that game because of the play calls, I thought. So that's the other thing with the Chiefs, right? It's like not only do they have the quarterback and then a few of these guys, but they have a coaching advantage on side of both sides of the ball against most teams.
It's the last thing I'll say about the Chiefs, and I think we need to do a little bit on the Bills before we get
to talk about the matchup specific.
Yeah, before we get to the other game. But what I was really interested in is how Andy Reid was going to compensate for the issue at left tackle. And when it got really bad in the fourth quarter, it was interesting to see they broke out some screen passes, some shovel passes. They ran plays that were action at that tackle, where it's and I think the reason for that was because you noticed that Patrick Mahomes was uncomfortable at a certain point. He didn't feel comfortable with his back there. And watching Andy Reid in the course of a game, in the course of a drive, address those concerns is high level stuff that I don't think gets appreciated. To your point, when you say he's a special play caller, it's damn.
In game too.
No, I mean,
it really,
it's not even,
and that goes to the fourth quarter thing, right? Because if you have both an offensive and defensive coach who can make those in-game adjustments routinely, and it's such a good example
and that's
about
where,
how they adjusted.
That's where
to the left
it feels like it reminds me of the Ravens playoff game last year, where it felt very clearly towards the end of the game and after the game that they had a plan for the game script. It's this is how we want this to play out. It played out exactly how they wanted to play out. I almost think that ultimately that some of these games they're coming into, and maybe this is revisionist history, but it's what we have. We have a quarterback that is more clutch than anybody, and we have a coaching staff on both sides that is adaptable with players that are also. So it doesn't, while it feels kind of unusual that they're so good in the fourth quarter, it's also maybe they are coming into these games let's use, which sounds crazy, let's stay close and let's use the first 3 quarters to figure out what we are going to do on these final drives defensively and offensively. And then all of a sudden we're running defensive schemes that we haven't run much of this game, and we're running offensive plays that we just drew up in the sand because we recognize how you are playing, and you think it's going to keep working. It's not going to work in the fourth quarter.
We've sort of, in a roundabout way, hit on a really good explanation and thesis for the Kansas City Chiefs, which is they have three of the best problem solvers in the NFL, in the two coaches and the quarterback. And I mean, I think back to the 2020 game against the Texans, right, where they were down 24-0 and then the second half, right? And I just remember watching that and just watching them in real time, both schematically and then Patrick Mahomes making insane plays. Like, there's nothing fluky about it. Like, the longer a game goes on, the more likely it is they're going to win. It sounds silly.
It sounds ridiculous, but it does kind of feel like that.
So, yeah, when we talk about third down and fourth quarters and how typically those things tend not to be sustainable or whatever, well, yeah, for most teams, but the Chiefs just aren't most teams. Gosh, I'm sorry. 31 other fan bases are vomiting listening to this, so we really got.
I mean, I'm vomiting a little bit too, but we promised we could move on. We could do this again next week because they're still going to be relevant then.
Well, there's some Bills talk to this too, and look, part of the reason that Patrick Mahomes has to be clutch is because the offense only has 13 points with 6 minutes left in these games, and it's like he's forced into these leverage situations, whether that's by design or by lack of offensive talent around him, left tackle. Yeah. But what's interesting is it seems like whenever the Bills play, this might be something that's just our nostalgia looking at it, that these games are awesome. Whether it was the playoff game last year, or the Kadarius Toney game, or going back to 13 seconds, et cetera, et cetera. What are the trigger points that the Bills are going to look at in this game where they can exploit the Chiefs?
I mean, it's obviously the position we've been talking about. It's left tackle, and Von Miller's back, and he's rushing the passer well. He's give you about 20 snaps a game. Gregory Rousseau's rushing the passer well. It's who, and so that's important that they have two guys, I think, that can both rush the passer well. And that is the best way to stop. But I mean, it's not as if Andy Reid's going to be surprised by that. So it's how much it forces them to distort their offense. And the thing in watching the Bills this year that I've been surprised by, Mina, is how multiple they've been on defense. They're historically like a classic, Seahawks come to mind as like a we do what we do team, but it feels like defenses can't get away with that as much anymore. And I see them doing things that we both respect McDermott's ability to get the most out of his group, but it seems like they are
great inspirational speech guy.
No, he's terrible at inspirational speeches, but he's good at scheme. But yeah, I see him running man and blitzes and like Spags-esque disguises, like Vikings-ish disguises. Like, this is not the defense that I recognize. They used to just like, hey, let him get after it up front, and we're going to play cover 3 behind.
Yeah, they changed the picture on the back end a fair amount. They've been doing some creative things with pressures. I think up front they have an advantage, especially against those tackles. I think that the Chiefs will probably try to just run the ball on early downs. And the Bills have been, I would say, surprisingly good in run defense, but a team that can, get into heavy personnel and really get downhill on them. Obviously, the Ravens being the example that comes to mind, can give them some difficulty because they're still like a light defense, right? So I think on that side, but I think it'll be close on that side of the ball. The other side, what bums me out so much is the injuries that the Bills have on offense in this one. No Coleman. Kincaid, I think, is a huge absence. You talked a couple weeks ago about how the Chiefs defense has been vulnerable to tight ends, giving up the 3rd most yards per play. And if he's not available in this game, you're really leaning on, obviously, Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, yards after the catch. And I said this on NFL Live, but like Josh Allen legs, I feel like will be massive in this game. They always are in big games. Pardon me. It's their break in case of emergency play. But against Chiefs defense, that even if they play man coverage, they'll still have somebody with eyes on Allen. I feel like it's going to be like not just like a luxury, but a necessity. I
mean, Amari Cooper, is he playing? I know he has a wrist issue too. I don't know if they.
They said he should be.
I think
back.
he is.
Yeah.
And he's their lone weapon. The kind of newish version, I guess, after the Brady switch at coordinator, this team has become like a lot more focused on running the ball. And that's the matchup that I think really matters, is or the place where this offense versus defense will be decided, because as we all know, the Chiefs are incredible at stopping the run, and the Bills, the best version of Josh Allen and the best version of these Bills, are a team that runs the ball well. Go ahead.
I thought I just had, with McDuffie playing outside more, would you move McDuffie back into the slot in this one to go up against Khalil Shakir, or would you keep him outside against Amari Cooper?
Yeah. That's a good question.
McDuffie, I love him, but he had a long day against Denver.
Yeah. Let me think. So I'd leave him outside. I think I'd leave McDuffie outside because of, his versatility allows you to do a bunch of different things. I think when you put him inside, there's less, you can't put him inside and rotate to too deep from the nickel spot. Then you move him outside to rotate to him to too deep, or rotate him down from, or rotate him out. It feels like while you're closer into the ball, your responsibilities and your alignment makes you more confined as a playmaker. And I don't imagine that the Chiefs are going to major in man coverage. Shakir is a problem. I really like him, but I don't imagine you're turning your head sideways, but I don't imagine that because of the Josh Allen's running ability, you want to put him in, you want to go in man coverage with a spy?
They had a spy, but then the Bills were just taking the spy out.
Right.
Hold on. Okay, so they did not play a lot of man coverage last time against Josh Allen. They played mostly zone, which is interesting.
You were right, Mina.
Interesting.
Why do you seem kind of surprised?
No,
obviously. Not obviously, but it would stand to reason that if you got a quarterback who his most unique weapon and the thing that beats you the most is running with the ball, is you don't want to turn your back to him. So I would have been surprised if they went more man with a spy, because then you are in
one-on-one.
Yeah, I'd rather have
that mongoloid.
Uh-huh.
How many times do you think Josh Allen carried the football in that game?
I don't know, 5 times.
14.
12 times.
Damn.
Ooh, that's close. I lost Price is Right. You won Price is Right, Dominique.
When the temperature drops and the games get important and legacies are on the line, break in case of emergency, Josh Allen draw.
Yeah.
Every time.
Do you think, I guess you don't have to make a prediction, but I think before I started to prepare for this show, I would have said the Bills, and part of me honestly kind of wants the Chiefs to lose, because
Ooh,
this is
do the Kellerman.
What? Oh,
when if the aliens reported the death beam down at Earth,
Iguodala,
and there's one shot on the line, who are you taking, Bills or Chiefs?
Iguodala. I would say, yeah. So then I started looking at the game and the way that it matches up, and I feel like I want to go with the Chiefs now at this point. I think the
only reason I was tempted to take the Bills is because the Chiefs are undefeated.
Right.
And there's a tightness that comes with that, where you're you got to lose at some point, right?
Yeah, for most teams. You think the Chiefs are tight? They don't care about but winning a 3rd Super Bowl in a row. I think the Bills are going to be just as
these
tight.
Quarterbacks are not going to, they're not going to be chill, you know, they care about their head-to-head.
Yeah, that is fair. But yeah, I prior to this game, just with both of these teams in my head, before I actually sat down to match up and watch the tape with the opponent in mind, I was like, the Bills are going to win. But the Bills, I
feel like you've said that the last 4 weeks against the Chiefs.
I know. But this is the first time that I actually feel like I think the Chiefs are better than the Bills. I think that some of these other teams I thought were better than the Chiefs, but I obviously was wrong about that. But I think the Chiefs are actually better than the Bills. The issues that the Bills have, that particular matchup of the ends versus the tackles, that's one that's concerning on the Chiefs side. Other than that, I like the Chiefs in this specific matchup, especially because of the running attack.
That's what I'm very interested in seeing, is if the Bills can stop Kansas City on the ground or limit them or make them slightly less efficient. Because if they do, I think they'll win.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be tricky.
But
Don Kincaid, by the way, had the most receiving yards of any player in this game. Sorry, I'm just looking at this last.
He was interesting when you talked about that.
If they didn't have Kincaid and Coleman out, I'd feel a lot better.
The interesting thing about Kincaid is he hasn't had more than 52 yards this season. He hasn't been the weapon we thought he was going to be this season for them. But
all right, we can go on to the next game. But the one last thing is, I think what I've imagined is, without the weapons that the Bills have, with the injury to their pass catchers and with the Chiefs being so good at stopping the run, I get concerned about the version of Josh Allen that you're going to see. And you're going to see a version of Josh Allen that is going to put the ball in danger. He's going to run the hell out of the ball, but he's also going to put the ball in danger. And I don't see that happening on the other side. And that's what scares me.
Most of the time, throw an unacceptable ball every single game.
Oh, yeah,
at this point?
I'm sure he does. He throws plenty of interceptable balls this season.
Not in this game.
I feel differently about this particular matchup. That's it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Next game, Ravens Steelers. This
was fun.
Yeah, this is a really interesting game. The Steelers continue to defy our expectations during the Russell Wilson renaissance, where he's throwing moonballs downfield to.
There has to be another word other than renaissance, because renaissance suggests something that I don't necessarily agree with.
Okay, well, people are calling it the Russerection on.
Okay.
That sounds sexual.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to say resurrection, but it does sound like Russ. Yeah. That is not what we want. Let's go back to the Russessance. Let's go back to the Russessance.
Oh man, the Russ microwaving. Well, he's been throwing moonballs to Mike Williams and George Pickens. The Steelers defense has been awesome, and the Ravens continue to be the team that you watch them, and their offense seems like the best offense in the NFL. Their defense has been slightly confounding this year, but they probably could have won every single game that they lost this season. So what when you look at this matchup, what do you see?
I'll let Mina go first because I got a lot.
Okay, I'll focus on the Russ-sance.
Thank you.
That doesn't work. Fine. I got a stat for you guys.
Stat me down.
So Russ has played three games now, right? Mm-hmm. Against single high coverage, he has 12 big plays, which is second most in the NFL in that time frame. Against split safety, he has one, which is second worst in the NFL. Stop playing single high against Russell Wilson.
It's plain and simple. The Ravens.
I mean, I know you have to sometime. I'm not saying obviously, but I'm talking like the Commanders did it 81% of the time. They completely sold out to stop the run. It's very Dan Quinn. We don't have to. And look, the Steelers can run the ball well. I think Najee Harris is a little bit hurt. I don't know what his status is for this one, by the way. Okay. Yeah. So the Ravens have an excellent run defense, and they do not have to stack the box, and they do not have to drop safety to do so. Sell out against coverage. I never want to see George Pickens in this game with more than two humans within 5 yards of him.
Yeah.
Okay, Domonique.
Yes, the Ravens do have a problem with giving up big plays too. So this does play into their hands in a way that could be a little concerning. This was another game. I shouldn't go on TV early in the week.
Do you want to talk about our interaction about this game?
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, so what'd you say on TV?
On TV, I was like, the Steelers played Lamar well. Normally, all the games are tight when they play each other. I suspect that they'll do a good job in this game also. And that was earlier in the week on Tuesday. And then this morning, before I did I went back and watched when they played Lamar last year. Before I did that,
didn't they have like 30 drops? I remember being so mad watching that.
There were drops, but that wasn't the only problem. I rewatched it today. The drops weren't the only problem. Lamar had some issues himself. But this morning, before I rewatched that game, I told Charlie the same sort of thing. And then I watched that game, and then I watched Lamar from this year, and then I looked at the numbers and realized it's a whole different human. Guy. Like, it's a whole different person. And as you guys know, the way to beat Lamar Jackson, the book on beating Lamar Jackson, was to blitz him. Yeah. Right now, he is the best quarterback in the NFL against the blitz. And it's not even that he's the best quarterback against the blitz. He's the best quarterback at anything in the NFL against the blitz. Yeah. So like Patrick Mahomes and he have similar QBRs. Patrick, as we talked about, Patrick is great on third down. Patrick's QBR of 93 on third down is the same pretty much as Lamar Jackson's 93 on third down. The no pressure QBR, the best no pressure QBR in the league is 84. Lamar Jackson has a 93 QBR, and it's not like a small sample size. It's a lot of plays, and the reason why all that matters and the reason why they've turned his weakness into the best that they do, which is insane. The reason why that matters is because they blitzed him 53% of the time last year.
Yeah.
And that was their strategy. We are going to blitz you. And it worked well enough. And it worked for lots of teams. That don't work no more. Lamar Jackson's created 41 explosive play, or actually 41 plays of 10-plus yards. I think 11 of 20-plus yards when being blitzed. And that's something that I talk about a lot, is what you want to do at some point when people are blitzing you is make them pay big, because you don't discourage them from blitzing you if you just gain 4 yards or gain 5 yards. They'll blitz you again because the risk reward is fine. You can take 4. Sooner or later, we're going to get a sack fumble. But if you break them for big plays, then they're going to stop doing it. And the last thing, we haven't even gotten to the Derrick Henry part of this. So I decided to look at all of Derrick Henry's explosive runs again this year. And we've talked about this before. Explosive runs are more likely, it's counterintuitive, but they're more likely when the box is loaded because they have just like one line of defense, essentially. They can't hem you in with 2 safeties back. And so I looked at all of his explosive runs again. Quite a few of them are against blitzes. So again, they have addressed their biggest issue in a way that has turned their biggest problem into a strength. And so I'm looking forward to, obviously the Steelers are very talented. The Steelers aren't afraid of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens this game. They're going to go into it with that attitude. But I have a sneaking feeling that all the stats that you look at and how Lamar has struggled against the Steelers and how all the games are close, I feel like that don't matter no more.
That's exactly what our interaction was, where it's like, this is different. Like, my reaction was shock. I was like, this Ravens offense struggling against anyone?
We got to the same conclusion,
yeah,
but you did it off vibes.
Off vibes. Totally vibes.
And I did it for watching tape.
Well, I also did it off of
you're more efficient.
The tweet that last week I referenced on our show from Mina, which is Lamar Jackson and metrics this season: first in QBR, first in success rate, first in EPA per deep ball, first in yards per attempt, first in touchdown to interception ratio, first in 20+ yard plays. He's throwing a perfect game.
He doesn't get sacked, and he doesn't really throw interceptions. So the only moments where watching him this year where I felt like he was anything less than the obvious best quarterback in football, there's only been like a couple games, the Raiders game, moments in the Cleveland game, were when I felt like he was big play hunting. Yeah. And that was definitely the case in the Raiders game. He had the highest average depth of target of the season. It's been a thing. Even last year, the MVP year, the Chiefs game, the divisional, the championship game, pardon me, this offense, I felt like Lamar was pushing it. And I think that would be, if you're Pittsburgh, your hope in this one is that you're very, very good in sound run defense, right? Which we just saw shut down Washington, stops Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on the ground so that you actually get him into third longs. Pass rush, it's very hard to get to Lamar, but if you can get him to big play hunt and take them out of the rhythm of the intermediate play action, passing attack and whatnot, you can at least get some variance there and perhaps get off the field that way. I think for Pittsburgh, what's important is when he holds on to the football in those situations and extends, and it's going to happen, don't get grabby. Joey Porter Jr., you're a great player. Don't grab. Say Flowers. Yeah. He really gigs around. That's probably your best chance. If I had to give some hope, or cope for Pittsburgh, I mean, they do match up well with them, Domonique, in a lot of ways. I understand the Ravens are better this year, but the Steelers defense is also arguably better than they were last season.
The Highsmith injury matters too, because as I was watching the tape last year, they used him a lot in situations where Lamar was in isolation. They felt comfortable doing stunts that put Highsmith as the one who was supposed to address the zone read. And the last thing before you go, Charlie, that I'll say is I watched all of the running plays specifically from the Ravens last year, and they had some pretty good running success. They were good against the run, but I noticed that almost exclusively zone read and just a little bit of like zone, but it's from pistol, like once or twice under center. They run under center runs now, and that's a whole different animal with Derrick Henry. And that's something I think that's part of the reason, one of the under-discussed reasons why this offense is so good is because they are so versatile, and they're chameleon-like in that they can change their identity from a zone read team to a passing team to a screen team to a 1990s are back.
I'm glad you made that point.
I formation, bash you in the face.
They also run play action out of both formations, which is, and they run it extremely well out of both under center and out of the gun,
so
which is
comfortable.
And so the reason that point is, thank you for bolstering my point with actual analysis. But Mina, you talked about the Washington game last week where they were able to really stop Jaden Daniels from running the ball. He had less than 5 rushing yards. That happened against an excellent defense to Lamar Jackson 2 weeks ago against Denver. He had 3 carries for 4 yards. He went 16 for 19 for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. And Domonique looked at all of his incompletions. 2 of them were drops and 1 was a throwaway. So it's like he's just at such a different level of, okay, you're taking that away. Well, that's a choice.
Right.
I'll eviscerate you in a completely different way now.
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with just the unsackable aspect of it, the creation under pressure. And I think Noah Highsmith can't be overstated how big that is. They're also missing, I believe, Nick Herbig's still not playing, who is their backup edge rusher. So, if I'm the Ravens, I'm just throwing bodies at TJ Watt, just making anyone else beat you up.
I'm enjoying this, particularly enjoying it with Mina, because we've written and talked about Lamar together and separately a number of times. And the coolest thing about this season was after the draft, I remember talking to Mina about, after Lamar was drafted, about how this is so perfect because he's going to an actual smart organization. And while it's taken some time, and he's been great, obviously 2 MVPs and they've been great. While it's taken some time, this is like the manifestation of he could be the perfect quarterback because he has the ability to make you pay. Because I remember watching tape with Mina, and he's like reading defenses in college at a high level. And we obviously see the athletic ability, and he can break your blitz by throwing at the blitz. He can break your blitz by juking the free rusher. Like, this team is so good right now, and he's playing so well.
I can't believe just how catchable his passes look, too. The one that was... It was mesh with Mark Andrews, but then Mark Andrews broke up field versus Denver. He just handed that thing off to him 20 yards downfield. And probably the thing we don't talk enough about is his off-platform ability.
Somehow. I'm sorry, go
ahead.
The unique arm angles he takes. And again, when you talk about his unsackability, I think we tend to think about that in the context of his rushing and his athleticism, which is obviously a huge part of it. But another reason why it doesn't take sacks is because he can throw the football from so many different angles and platforms. And that also is something that makes quarterbacks very difficult to sack.
And the accuracy.
One other thought on Lamar, dude, Dominique, as you talk about his development, a lot of the good quarterbacks in the NFL right now are playing the best football of their careers. And you really see that, like, playing in the league for a long time tends to help. Yeah. Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, all of these guys are better quarterbacks than they were 3+ years ago. So anyways, as everybody screams about how awful quarterbacks are now and we're failing them, it just takes time sometimes, because as good as Lamar was at the beginning of his career, he's even better now. And he is obviously the high upper echelon of that example, but Baker Mayfield, like, there's so many examples across the league.
Kyler's a really interesting one.
Kyler Murray. Yeah. No, it's a great, what Kyler's doing in the pocket this year. Yeah.
Nobody's saying that nonsense on Blue Sky.
Blue Ski.
On Blue Ski.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought it was Blue Ski until I was told it was Blue Sky.
Charlie's like, I think I'm gonna join Blue Ski.
I think that's too Drewski coded from this.
Oh, man.
It's more fun to say.
I'm a Blueski boy.
Yeah, we're Blueski guys. So I almost closed my computer before we got to our Survivor pool.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Survivor pool. Then we get to Charles McDonald.
Here's all of the information in the preseason. I was 6-1. Dominique was 4-3. Mina was 6-1. We had a dead tie between me and Mina. I was picking harder games. They're all about even odds. But I digress.
None of that makes sense.
The regular preseason, me and Dominique became a team. We were 0-1. Mina was 1-0. Then the regular season started. We are 2-0. We've taken the Commanders and the Vikings. Mina is 1-1. She's taken the Saints and the Eagles.
Tough.
No, wait. There was a preseason and a preseason.
No.
That's
it's
right.
A preseason and a pre-regular season.
Yeah.
And then the season. I mean, let's not be silly.
One was the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
You can't keep narrowing the window.
Nope. You're 1-1. 2-0. You're only one game behind. Don't worry about it.
I mean, like, Mina, even if we tabulated it all together, me and you would be tied. Even if you counted your preseason.
No, we wouldn't.
I don't know. That's not what the spreadsheet says. So we let you pick first the last 2 weeks. We're going to pick first this week and take the Lions over the Jaguars.
Give me that.
Okay, who have I picked?
You've picked the Saints and the Eagles.
Okay. I am going to take... Scrolling up. I'll take the Dolphins over the Raiders.
Ooh. Nice. Gutsy. Thanks, Mina. Good luck to you this week. Thanks for joining us. Next up, Charles McDonald. All right, we want to welcome in Charles McDonald from the Football 301 podcast that he does with some other goons, I guess. Who cares? If Charles is there, you need to be there.
That's right.
He's smart. He gives you football on the 301 level, right? It's a school reference, right? Football 301.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a school reference.
I love school. I like how you guys got cool hats. I feel left out.
Did you not get this is a football player didn't get the 301 classes.
Nah, ain't nobody had time for no 301 classes.
I didn't come here to play school.
For who? For what? We all know what this situation is. You know what's good for me?
That's right.
Catching picks. You know what's good for y'all? Me catching picks. Go ahead and slide me that A and let me ride. I was actually a good student.
Yeah,
I'm just
you
playing around.
went to Harvard.
I was
not a good
shit.
student at all.
You were not?
Terrible student. I was a god-awful student. Yeah.
Why?
Terrible.
You're a smart guy, obviously.
I honestly, I just smoked way too much weed. Didn't go to class. Didn't work out for me. But it did work out for me.
Yeah, I was about to say it worked out. So kids, do not follow the Charles McDonald plan.
Don't follow this plan. Don't follow this plan. But it can work.
Have I told you the story that my sophomore year, because I went to one
college?
of those, sophomore year of college, I went to one of those schools where in high school where like no one skips class and they'll find you and stuff. And I accidentally slept through a history class, a 9 a.m. history class, and I emailed the professor apologizing. And
was it a lecture?
It was like a lecture.
It was like 400
like,
people in there.
Yeah, and he responded with like, "Yeah, don't care. Half the class is gone every Friday morning anyway."
Oh gosh, I didn't.
I was so innocent. Yeah, well, you had to go.
No, I mean, so the way that it works is they send class checkers. For when you're young, like a freshman, and if you have a persistent problem. So like I went to class and did well my first semester, and Dahlia ain't come peeking in my classes no more for the rest of the time there. And I went anyway because I don't know. I'm a rule follower.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, one of my friends in high school didn't have the best grades, but he got a scholarship to Duke to play football, and he got put in study hall auto because they saw his grades. They were like, "Bro, nope, not gonna mess around with this. Get your study hall immediately."
The first scholarship offer I got was to Duke, and I remember clearly my social studies teacher was like, "You got to take that. You're not gonna get into any other schools. You would never get into Duke otherwise." And I was like, I won't tell you the word that I thought. But it worked out for me. I wasn't going to no damn Duke. If I can't hoop, I'm going to Duke for it. They're good now, but like.
Did they have Peyton's buddy who was coaching at that point?
No, I'm not that young.
Yeah.
I don't even know who the coach was.
It was who's the guy who's Peyton Manning's friend who was the coach for a while?
Cutcliffe.
Yeah, Cutcliffe. Yeah. All right, should we talk some football now that we had that artful transition of who's Peyton Manning's buddy who coached at Duke? real expertise over here. So we've just previewed the two biggest games of the week, Steelers, Ravens, and Chiefs, Bills, which means we get to have a little fun. Our trusty segment, Good Game, Guilty Pleasure Game, where we're going to talk about the exciting things in the NFL and the things that actually excite us because of how weird they are. Domonique, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure. My guilty pleasure game is not even a game. It is the Netflix special that is going to be Tyson Paul. That are we calling it a boxing match? It's officially sanctioned, so I guess we have to. But hold on, you said hell yeah, Charles. You think it's a real fight? Like I have already determined in my mind that it is going to be highly choreographed.
Well, what do you mean real? Like I would imagine that Jake Paul can probably he might be able to outpunch Mike Tyson at this point in his life. I don't want to say probably will, but he might be able to because this is what he does. I think he does real boxing matches just against guys who aren't actually good at boxing anymore or never were good at boxing.
Right, but I think
that's why we like it.
Most of his matches have been against guys whose health we were not concerned about. Have we forgotten that Mike Tyson is not only old, but was in a wheelchair not too long ago, walking around the airport with a cane. And also, this is a postponed fight because his tummy was messed up. Like, there's no way. I'm going to watch it because I already have Netflix. It don't cost me no more money. I'm going to watch it with one eye closed because I don't know if somehow it makes me feel a little bit better. But
you're not going to watch it with one eye closed. You and Declan are going to be watching it, and he's going to be punching you in the side of the arm over and over again.
Nah, well, we don't have the same age gap that they have.
It's true.
You get rocked back.
You kind of do.
Yeah, we do. But I'm closer to my prime.
Yeah.
But anyway, you sincerely believe that there's not like, I don't know, maybe I'm just being a skeptic because I do not believe the Mayweather-McGregor fight was like 100% real. Like, I felt like Mayweather was carrying him and didn't really want to knock him out. Like, I felt like there was a handshake agreement. And I'm assuming that the same thing is going to happen now because I think, am I wrong for thinking that Jake Paul is like Mike Tyson is overmatched against Jake Paul?
You're not wrong. Dude, he's 60 years old.
Right. Okay. So,
you know, this is not legitimate, but it's like real in the sense that they're going to be hitting each other. And that's really all it takes for me to watch it. Like the Floyd Mayweather-McGregor fight, like the first round of that absolutely was like borderline staged because Floyd could have knocked him out. But that would have been boring. So you got to string it along. And that was the one that got me hooked on like celebrity boxing matches. Yeah. Like I will watch that before I watch a real boxing match. Darren Williams knocking out Frank Gore. I was there, man. Ooh. Adrian Peterson getting knocked out by Le'Veon Bell. I was there. Ooh. I'm going to be there for this one too. Nate
Robinson was the peak of this celebrity boxing. It's all downhill from there. And I think I'm talking like I enjoyed the McGregor Mayweather fight, even though I recognize that it wasn't a fight. But I do feel like it only has so much life. Like I think if Paul was smart, he'd let Tyson win.
Knock him out. Yeah.
He'd let Tyson win and lock Tyson up right now for the rematch. Let him knock him out and move on.
So
let him knock him out?
Yeah.
Or fake the knockout.
Technical loss. You don't want to get knocked out by a 60-year-old man, even if it's Mike Tyson.
Yeah, I think you're forgiven if it's Mike Tyson.
So I have this thing that I think about often, which I'm going to admit on this show, and Dominique's going to make fun of me, is
safe
like
space.
I'll watch like the Wimbledon final, and I'll think to myself, what age would Novak Djokovic have to be for me to beat him in tennis? And I think it's like either like 4 years old or 85, but like no one in that 81-year gap. Or I'm like, what age would Randy Moss have to be for me to cover him on a 9? And it's like maybe 6 years old. Do you think 6 years? I think I could guard 6-year-old Randy Moss. And then
it depends. Yeah, 6 is 6.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
6 is doable, but like, you know, some kids start to get real fast around that age.
I was thinking
faster than your average adult who doesn't work out.
Oh yeah, and like 9 years old, I'm getting dusted. Yes,
I mean it depends on the thing about like I as you know am a championship flag football coach.
Yeah,
and at that age from like 9 to like 14,
yeah,
it happens differently for different kids.
Yeah.
So you could catch a 9-year-old that is not that great, and then you see him when he's 11. It's absurd. So it depends on how soon Randy became Randy.
And so like I think about this because this is this all started because I had read this article about how when Rafael Nadal was 13, he beat Pat Cash, who was number 4 in the world in tennis. And it was like obviously him at probably age, he's the best young player ever, but him at age 10. So I think to myself, what age would Mike Tyson have to be for the 3 of us to be in a boxing match where we don't train like a professional fighter? And I think for me, beating Mike Tyson, it might be 75.
At the same time, we
no, individually. Oh, okay. Yours is going to be younger, and yours is going to be younger. But my number's 75.
I wouldn't try to swing on Mike Tyson until he's walking around like Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, that's
the only time I would be trying to do it. 100 years old, can't stand up. That's the only time I'm trying to fight Mike Tyson. Because 75. There's 75-year-olds who still work out. He could probably still swing and catch you and knock you out. 85, you're getting closer, but 100 for sure.
100. Okay. I might have underestimated it.
I don't think I don't know. I have a level of arrogance that I have to hide most of the time, so I won't tell you what I actually think.
You think right now. You think right now.
Charles, what's your good game?
You can say it right now.
What's your good game, Charles?
Wow.
What? Wow, okay. Nothing.
Domonique Foxworth
ask you a question.
Thinks he could beat Mike Tyson in a fight right now.
I don't think I could beat Mike Tyson in no fight right now. Charlie Kravitz thinks that Michael Jordan would be mediocre in the NBA.
No.
I'll have you, Charles.
No.
He
Charles.
said he'd be just one of the guys.
Charles, The reason we're under prep for the show, we're talking about these hypotheticals, is I said that 1988 Michael Jordan would eviscerate the current NBA, and Dominique was like, he'd be very good, don't get me wrong, but the best? He's not going to be the best.
What's your good game, Charles? I will not stand for this blasphemy against the name of the show. Stop it.
My guy thinks Zach LaVine is better than 88 Jordan.
What's your good game,
nuts.
Charles?
Okay. I won't even believe that you believe that.
Thank you.
That's crazy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I thank you for respect.
I'm rolling with the Bengals taking on the Chargers Sunday Night Football. We got Herbert versus Burrow. Both of those guys are playing absolutely out of their mind right now. It's kind of showing up in the stat sheet a little bit differently because the Chargers offense is still trying to find its legs, and they know their identity, but they're still trying to be, proficient at their identity, which is, running into a brick wall every first down and then yelling, "Justin, save us" on 3rd and long. But he's getting the job done for them. And I think it's been really cool to see how he's allowed Lab McConkey to have a breakout rookie season. Quentin Johnson looks like someone who can stick in the NFL now. And we've all seen what Burrow's been doing on the flip side, where it's just been bombs away between him and Jamar Chase. It seems like T. Higgins might be back this week. So this is kind of a cool matchup, not only from a quarterback perspective, but also the Chargers seem to be a year ahead of schedule. I'm not sure if it's because the rest of the AFC is just terrible, but if you start running through the metrics, like they objectively have one of the best defenses in the league. And they've played a lot of cupcake opponents for sure. And there's going to be people who say that defensive metrics are just a product of the offenses you play. But it's hard to put up, like 1.1 yards or points per drive the entire season through 10 games that they've played. So this is going to be a big test for them. The Chargers' next 5 games quietly are kind of tough from an offensive perspective. So this is kind of their first their first real battle of the year against some real elite players. But we're going to learn a lot about that team. We're going to learn a lot about how much fight the Bengals have left as they try to save their season. I think it's just kind of a cool landmark game at this point in the year for all the talent that's on the field.
On Football 301, do you guys call each other professors?
No.
Okay, just making sure. That was going to be whack if you did. I like this game.
I agree.
It's a bad joke.
It wasn't a joke. It just crossed my mind. It's not a joke.
Now I'm all frazzled from the gaslighting. Continue on.
I don't mind awkward. We consider this awkward all show. Makes me happy.
It's almost Friday. I got nowhere to go.
Oh, Friday. Yeah. I'm supposed to watch Friday After Next tonight with my son. That's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this game because I've been trumpeting how good the Chargers are for a while now. I don't know about a while, a couple weeks. I've been appreciating specifically how good their defense has played. And there's no tougher matchup, or very few matchups tougher than going up against the way Joe Burrow is playing right now. So I think this is, to get into my cliche bag, it's one of those measuring stick games where I'm going to have to shut up and say the Chargers really aren't ahead of schedule. It really aren't as good as I think they are. They just been beating up on bums, or we have to consider them one of these teams that, to get it back in the cliche bag, teams that's going to make the playoffs and no one's going to want to play because they have a quarterback that can get them out of any trouble. So, no matter how bad their offense looks at any given time, they have a guy over there that's so special that he can make the plays in the game outside of structure and outside of the game plan. And if their defense is as good as it's looked lately, then they'll be competitive and be trouble for anybody. So yeah, I'm looking forward. That's the main thing I'm looking at, because I don't think the Bengals, I know it's possible the Bengals could make the playoffs, but I don't see that happening because they've been so inconsistent. They're not going to go
so bad.
They're not going to go undefeated the rest of the way, which is pretty much what they're going to have to do to assure themselves a spot in the playoffs. But I do want to know how good this Chargers defense is and how scared the rest of the AFC should be this season, the first year of the Harbaugh West experiment.
Yeah, well, Jim Harbaugh, he's going to start looking at some of these Bengals run defense numbers and taking it as just a challenge of his manhood on how many times he's going to run this ball. Because in terms of just success rate, no one is worse than the Bengals defense when it comes to when it comes to defending the run. So, the Chargers run game it's kind of funny because they just kind of run into a wall over and over again, and then J.K. Dobbins will break one. But this week, it might be a little bit easier to actually stay on schedule. And if they can not have to rely on Herbert on 3rd and long, then that gives them more options, as they're trying to march down the field. So I think that this, for the Chargers offense, could be a breakout game. But the real meat of this battle is Bengals offense versus the Chargers defense, because dude, this Chargers defense was arguably the worst defense in football just this time last year. And I don't know if this is just me being a skeptic, but I keep waiting for some of that to start to show up, because this is largely the same group of players they had last year with a few new faces sprinkled in, but they've been consistent. It seems like Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator they hired from Michigan, who followed Harbaugh over there, is living up to the hype. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are having good years. I mean, it's all coming together, but this is like you got two blue chippers plus potentially T. Higgins back in the lineup, and that's really going to strain them and test and see where they are right now.
I'm interested in the Herbert part of it.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's like the low hanging fruit, but like we heard so much about this guy for so many years. He was a nerd Elvis quarterback, and it was like frustrating at points because we were like, when is this all going to come together? And I know the offense is very different now. They haven't built out the vertical threats that we wanted them to have when they were trotting out, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and we didn't see all of Herbert's talent, but he's been playing flawless football, like really under the radar. And it's almost crazy to me that this guy who was so hyped up for so many years is actually starting to deliver on it. And now it's like, we're on to the shiny new toy. Let's talk about CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels.
And he's juking people out of their shoes, which is also really fun and impressive. But yeah, I mean, I think all the tools are there and the ability is there. So yeah, I think obviously we'll all end up talking about Herbert in the end, but the defense is the big question for me going to that game. All right. Charles, you want to give us your guilty pleasure game?
Yeah, I'm actually going to this game, and I need to say that I chose this game before the Colts decided to start Anthony Richardson. The Colts versus Jets on Sunday at MetLife. I was going to go watch Joe Flacco play Aaron Rodgers literally just to get out of the house on a Sunday and not sit in front of the TV and my computer screen for 14 hours. And then by the grace of God, Wednesday, the Colts, as they just kind of hit the randomizer button every week and try to figure out what to say, Anthony Richardson is back starting. And I think that actually it's intriguing because this is not quite like what happened with the Panthers and Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, because the Panthers offense actually got better for a little bit when Andy Dalton walked into the starting role. Colts still suck for the most part. Joe Flacco, it's been weird watching like the Joe Flacco resurgence, because I think people have been giving him way more credit than he deserves, like for what he's actually produced on the field. And we see that now as they go back to Anthony Richardson. I love a good train wreck, and I think you might have two of them going on at the same time. I don't know what the Colts are thinking. Obviously, the Jets have come to just, they're 3-7, and they spent all these money in draft picks to be here. It's a guilty pleasure. It might end up being 7-3 by the end of the game, but as long as someone leaves unhappy, I'll be happy.
I was about to say, who do you think's the bigger train wreck situation?
I mean, the Jets are a bigger train wreck.
The Jets have to be.
The Jets have to be. It was a bigger train with higher expectations. Anthony Richardson has 3 good games in a row, and we're feeling all good about the Colts again. The Jets, 3 good games in a row is not going to happen, but they're still in hell. But it might be worse then because they convinced themselves that they could run it back with Aaron Rodgers next year.
Yeah, but if he loses to Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers loses to Anthony Richardson and Anthony Richardson's like 4 for 15 in the game, it's going to be so funny. That's like the best case scenario.
That's on the table.
Oh, it's very much on the table.
I mean, that running attack is going to be rejuvenated now that Anthony's back in the game, and he is going to make some big plays. Hopefully the receivers can catch the deep balls that he throws. The interesting thing is obviously the quarterback in this situation to me, between either of these teams. Like Aaron Rodgers, we've watched it week after week. I don't expect, and he's not terrible, but that situation is terrible. Right. I don't expect it to get better. They're not going to make the playoffs. The Colts is a different situation where I do expect it to get better. And Anthony Richardson, the criticism was he wasn't approaching the week of practice every week with an attention to detail and focus. And so we're going to sit you behind this veteran quarterback so you can learn how to do that. And then he's going to go ahead and throw the ball to the other team. 2 weeks is
all it takes, I guess.
Yeah, it just that's a weird decision to make with Joe Flacco being the backup that you bring in to help your young quarterback learn and mature. That hasn't worked out, but I guess I also thought that part of it was going to be learn this lesson. This is how you're supposed to play quarterback. Watch this guy. Be like him. But then he went out there and did all the things that you don't want him to do. So if they thought that the result of this was going to be Anthony Richardson came back in humbled and ready to behave in a way that they thought was appropriate, I don't think it worked. But maybe Anthony Richardson will have better success now because he's had a couple weeks to prepare. I don't know, because I don't imagine that this had the effect that they wanted it to have. I'm rooting for Anthony Richardson, as I'm sure I know Charlie is.
Yeah.
Charlie loves AR. That's his guy.
Yeah, I obviously want.
I'm rooting for him too.
Yeah, but like, what's the process of that? Is there how much of it is it? Can a guy get his brain unscrambled just taking a break?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it depends on how you spend the break. Just taking a break is not. I mean, I guess it's nice to just take a breath and not be stressed out for a couple of weeks. But I think that in that break time, you have to decide what you're going to focus on. Like, what are we going to address? What's the biggest problem? And it seems like what's coming out of the Colts camp is that it's an overarching way that he approaches the week and the way that he approaches preparation. Attention to detail kept being the word that was brought up, and like level of focus. And so it suggests that it wasn't necessarily a specific thing that's happening on the field. It's that the things that are happening on the field are not good enough as a result of the things that is happening in the week leading up to it. So maybe they dedicated someone to him the last couple weeks to help him understand how he's supposed to prepare, or maybe it just got his attention and now he's going to prepare better. But it's also a possibility that they aren't right. Something that I sometimes I forget is that I assume that the people in charge are right, and sometimes they aren't right.
Well, you know who's in charge of this one? The overarching person who's in charge is Jim Irsay.
Yeah, he's often not right.
You don't know what the hell's going on in his brain week to week. Yeah. Neither does he. That's all I have on the Colts situation. Like, you know, we're trying to apply logic to a space where logic hasn't existed for quite some time. I mean, they've been a mess over the past couple of years. Even to the point I thought that Zach Kiefer, who's a writer for The Athletic, made a good point when Anthony Richardson got benched, and basically all the players said they found out on Twitter. He said they found out the same way that Jeff Saturday got hired as their head coach, on Twitter. So, you know who's pulling the strings here. We know enough about that person.
I spend a good amount of time with Jeff now, and talking to him about his experience there and how things are run there is I don't want to portray any confidences, but we'll just say it's eye-opening.
He said it on our show.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he talked about the experience on our show being like, things are going weird in the organization right now. He didn't talk about his experience as much, but he said that it's, go back and listen.
All right, cool. The good game that I'm looking forward to, I don't know that most people would call it a good game, but it has a good team in it.
This is definitely not a good game.
Well, it's a good team that I want to see their bounce back. The Detroit Lions. What happened to them last week was a win.
They're playing the 2-8 Jaguars.
They are playing the 2-8 Jaguars. I was trying to leave that
with McCorkle Jones playing quarterback.
So I could hype up this game, because this is what falls into my good game, because I want to watch this game. We saw the Lions' beloved offensive line, which I love so much and is the core to everything they're doing there. They struggled in situations. Struggled is a stretch. They were not able to run the ball with the efficiency that they normally do, and that put their quarterback in a situation that he has not been in much this season, and it resulted in several interceptions. A few of them, I mean, there were some tips. There was a Hail Mary, so I don't want to blame it all on them, on Goff, but it also was a lot of bad passes and just ugly situations. I think that is the thing that's hanging over this team. While their defense is playing better, the big question hanging over this team is what happens when you're asking Jared Goff to be special. And I was under the assumption that some of the things that we saw him do last year in the playoffs were things that I can trust that he will do going forward. And it's not fair to say one game is enough to backtrack on Jared Goff altogether, but it gave me pause. So I'm looking forward to them to return to their blowout ways against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Well, I thought that last week was kind of a good microcosm of why Jared Goff can't be the MVP of the NFL. He's a good quarterback. They've designed a system that kind of like accentuates the best of what he did when he and Sean McVay figured it out and they went to the Super Bowl versus the Patriots. But to say he's like the driving force of success for that offense is a bit of a stretch. I mean, you have the best offensive line in the league, arguably the best running back duo, great tight end, elite slot receiver, one of the best offensive minds that is literally turning down jobs to come back to Detroit. It's a good situation, and he's doing his best to make the most of it. But last week, he threw 5 picks and they still won on the road. So that says it all to me. But if he gets together and against this team, I don't see how he couldn't. I mean, they should get back to winning by like 40 points this week, like they were.
I mean, that defense makes a lot of
prior.
mistakes and gives. So, like, the Lions are going to make some plays. The Jags are going to make some plays for the Lions. So, it should not be a problem. But I am interested in seeing what happens. So, I was really impressed with the Texans in that game. Their linebackers, I thought, were really good off the ball and aggressive and making it difficult for them to run against. I think the Jags have a bad defense, but some pieces that I'm looking forward to seeing matched up against this Lions offense, which I'm sure will roll. What do you think, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought about the fact that Jared Goff has two of the funniest stat lines of the season. He had the game where I think he had under 90 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then he also had a 5 interception game in a win. I feel like you're not seeing that too often from quarterbacks in the same season from a team that's the Super Bowl favorite.
He's the group project king.
Yeah, I actually think he's very good. I feel bad, but I did want to highlight those two stat lines. I'm going to give you my good game. My good game this week is Seahawks 49ers. Yeah. Not a great game, but I am continually interested to see if the 49ers defense more than the offense is going to elevate, coming back to where they were parts of last year and years previous of being like a very impactful unit, because I have a lot more faith that McCaffrey, although he didn't run the ball great last week, will be an offensive outlet and continue to get the offense back up to speed as they get slightly healthier, as Ricky Pearsall continues to recover from getting shot, as Debo gets healthier and maybe doesn't fight kickers. But really, it's the defensive side of the ball. Like, we don't know if Greenlaw is going to come back. We don't know if that defense is going to really reach levels it did in the early part of last season or the season before.
I think it's an important point because this 49ers team, as they've been a contender for the last several years, I guess 4 or 5 years, they've been in the mix and in the conversation, going to Super Bowls and championship games. And we always focus on Shanahan and the Shanahan offense. We rarely, I think, give attention to the fact that their defense has been really, really good throughout this whole process, and that's part of the reason why this team has been able to progress and be competitive every year. And they've started to degrade last year and this year. They seem to have gotten worse because their defense always was based on a dominant front, and their front is no longer as dominant. As good as Fred Warner is, this defense is not as dominant up front as they once were. And so I think you're right. That's the big question, and that's the thing that's hanging over this team that no one wants to talk about because we're focused on McCaffrey and Ayuk's injury and what's happening with Purdy, how good Purdy is. The real question around this team, if we are to assume that Christian McCaffrey's gravity and presence will help their offense, is how good is their defense going to be?
Right now, they're about a league average unit, it's a big drop off from where they've been over the past couple of years when they were competing for Super Bowls. But it's one of those defenses where like you still talk about some of the players that they have up front where they can be a little bend don't break at times, because you do have Fred Warner, you do have Nick Bosa, Lenore just got paid, so there's like someone that can cause some havoc at each level, but it's just not the same overwhelming force that they had in the past. The good thing is for the 49ers, the one thing they still do really well is throw the ball. Even as Debo's been sick and in and out of the lineup, Christian McCaffrey's been hurt, Ayuk's been hurt, the passing production hasn't fallen off all that much. I think they're still, around the top 5 unit in the league. So I kind of think they run the 49ers or the Seahawks out the stadium again. I'm really scared of that Seahawks offensive line. It's like at the point where it's hard for them to run a real offense. And I think that can be just like a over one-on-one, like overwhelming talent advantage in favor of the 49ers that gets them to the win. But it just also just feels like Kyle Shanahan has a number on this franchise, because they seem to blow the doors off of them just about every single time we see them play.
DK will be back, and he's probably the only receiver in the league, him and Debo, that probably could help the offensive line. He's big enough that he could be the tackle.
Have you seen some of Drake London's blocking when they use him as an inline tight end?
Oh, yeah.
I love seeing some little cut-ins where they don't highlight it enough. That dude he's a beast.
When did you become a film nerd? That's such a film nerd thing to say.
I just happened to notice it when I was watching ball.
I'm going to tell Jeff. Jeff's going to be so proud of you.
You're talking to 2 high school linemen here.
Oh, really?
We love to block.
That's right.
I
made it to D3 too.
Oh
no, I I specifically asked my senior year of high school to not play offensive line because we had a kid who was a D1 recruit for offensive line. I was like, he could take my spot and I'll just play defense.
Yeah.
And my coach agreed.
Nobody wants to block.
I don't know. I kind of liked it.
Wow.
It was the only way for me to be cool.
Again, nobody wants to block. All right, Charlie, what you got left?
We don't have any other good or really guilty pleasure games.
You
but
don't argue with me. I know where this is headed.
Where's it headed?
Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm going to go to Monday Night Football. This is a real guilty pleasure game of Texans at Cowboys because the Cowboys are an abomination. They are hilarious. And I do wonder, even though it's a night game, is Jerry going to put up the curtains at night for no reason out of the corner of that stadium to make sure that no one gets glare? And also, if the CJ Stroud-led Texans offense, I don't think it's CJ Stroud's fault. I think it's how cautious and predictable they are, cannot get their offense going against a team that is in so much turmoil, where Micah Parsons is calling out every single person there. Dak is on IR. Trey Lance might play. Nico Collins is coming back for the Texans this week. If they don't get their offense going this week, it is set off all of the alarms. This Texans team is not nearly as dangerous as we thought they were going to.
You said if they don't get their offense going, and then you named offensive players. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they've, other than obviously Diggs is out, but they have the full deck this week. Like,
right. So I mean, that would make it harder for the Texans offense to get going. But I think
why Nico Collins coming back, if they don't get going with him.
No, all right, I get you. I'm with you. I think that they should get it going. Their offensive line is still an issue though, but that's in their ability to push people around matters. This is one of those teams that you should be able to push around, even if you do not have the healthiest or the most talented offensive line. We had this conversation about them running on early downs before, and I think that it feels a lot like this is an edict from the top. As much as we want to blame Bobby Slowick because he's the offensive coordinator, their defense is good, and they're a defensive run team, and it seems like that's what they want to do, and that's not necessarily dumb. I think I understand what you're saying and how the predictability of their early down runs is not optimizing their offense, but if you are looking at the grand scheme of things and you are playing and you have a weaker offensive line and your receivers are hurt and your defense is actually super talented and playing well, then speeding up the game may be wise. The only other thing that they need to do is when they have Nico Collins back is design some deep ball shots, because I think that would be a proper addition. I don't hate them running on early downs as much as everyone else does.
No, I think it's a more viable strategy when Joe Mixon's in the game.
Yeah.
To me, that's one of the few semi-easy buttons that they've been able to press since Nico Collins has been out. Nico Collins' stats this year are insane, by the way.
Bonkers.
Even though he hasn't played in a while, he's still near the top of the league in a bunch of even volume stats.
Yeah.
So to get him back, that's huge. Charlie, this is beyond guilty pleasure, man. Like, this is sick stuff.
I'm a sick.
This is perverted.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I will say my guilty pleasure game last week was Cowboys Eagles because I wanted to see if they would ever play Trey Lance. And then they played Trey Lance and no. Then I was done. And then they're on Monday Night Football.
It's hilarious.
Way to go, Trey. Way to get that money.
I think I picked the guiltiest pleasure. Plus, we're gonna get the 20-second video of Skip Bayless just looking constipated in a Brandon Aubrey jersey, where he just makes guttural noises after the Cowboys lose.
It's one of your favorite things.
I love it every time.
Does Stephen A. even bother to laugh after these losses?
He does every time.
He's still
they're still flirting.
He still laughs after the losses.
No, this week he was actually pretty serious about the Cowboys. He wasn't making too much fun of them, and he was saying hey, Cowboys fans, this is a disgrace. It's an embarrassment. It's really bad. I think he wanted to laugh, but he was actually serious this Monday.
That might be worse. That might be worse is when they you can't be laughed at because they're actually starting to feel bad for you. When you have Stephen A. Smith saying, I'm actually starting to feel pretty bad for you over there. That's definitely tough.
He's not doing the slow pan into his face and cackling on the internet anymore. Yeah. That's bad.
That's definitely tough.
Yeah, he's preparing his presidential run. Kravitz Smith 2028. You're gonna be his running mate. I guess it'll be Smith Kravitz. All right.
I'm about to say you're definitely gonna be VP.
Yeah, Stephen A. is not the type to be anyone's backup. All right, Charles McDonald, thank you so much. Again, everyone, check him out, Football 301. But make sure you listen to us first. Then you go listen to them. I'm not trying to give our listeners away.
That's fine.
Okay, good. All right, Charles. I look forward to having you on again in the future sometimes. Tell your co-hosts, don't tell them nothing. We don't like them. They ain't been on our show. They ain't our friends. Right, Charlie?
You can tell them I say hi.
No,
They're great.
no, Charlie, we're together, bro. Right, Charlie?
Right.
There we go.
Never mind.
All right, thanks, Charlie. I love you, Podville. Thanks, all the great producers. We out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.